This was the feeling that paralyzed the control rooms of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the European Space Operations Center. On the one hand, a faction of scientists defended the safest explanation. 3I-ATLAS was a comet with an exotic chemical composition, originating from a star system with unknown elements. The fragmentation, they argued, was caused by thermal and rotational stress, and the geometric formation was an optical illusion, a momentary coincidence of fragments spinning in a vacuum. The radio pulses, just an unusual interaction between the object's magnetic field and the solar wind. It was the explanation that would keep the world sleeping peacefully. But another team, working in secret with the raw data, couldn't accept this version. To them, the mathematics were too clear to be a coincidence. The formation of the fragments wasn't random. It followed a fractal pattern, arranging itself like an antenna for a precious 12 seconds. It was enough time to emit a single, powerful pulse of broadband data, very different from the low-frequency heartbeat it had emitted before. A pulse that was directed toward Earth. What was in that pulse? The message remains the best-kept secret in modern astrophysics. But anonymous sources within the project leaked that it wasn't a language not as we know it. They were packets of biological and engineering data, complex genetic sequences and physics diagrams that defy our most fundamental laws. 3I-ATLAS didn't disintegrate. It delivered its payload. If this bold theory is correct, what do you think this cargo was? A message of peace? An instruction manual for the universe? Or a warning? Leave your theory in the comments. We want to hear what you think. The scientific debate that followed was fierce and completely confidential. The question was no longer, what is this object? But, what do we do with this information? Releasing the truth could cause global panic or worse, an arms race to decipher and control this alien technology. The decision was made. The official narrative would be that of a simple comet breaking up. The world received blurry Hubble photos and the story of a cosmic visitor who couldn't resist our star. A poetic but false ending. Meanwhile, the real work began. Teams of cryptographers, biologists, and theoretical physicists were assembled in secret locations to decipher the ATLAS packet. The complexity was overwhelming. It was as if a Stone Age civilization were trying to understand the workings of a smartphone. Each discovery opened up a chasm of new questions. The strange metallic isotopes found on the comet. Were they the components of a type of biological hardware, a living computer designed to survive millions of years of interstellar travel? The complex carbon compounds, the basis of a synthetic life form, contained within the message. Think about it for a moment. We're no longer talking about searching for life out there. We're talking about the possibility that the seeds of alien life, or its technology, are already here, stored on a supercomputer server in some underground bunker. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence may have ended in April 2020, not with a friendly hello, but with the silent delivery of code that could rewrite humanity's future. If you had access to this code, would you open it? What would be the risk of running a program of unknown origin, coming from the depths of the cosmos? This is no longer a question for scientists, it's a question for all of us. The official story of 3I-ATLAS ends with its dissolution, but the real story is just beginning. The smaller fragments, those that dispersed after the transmission, didn't disappear. They were too small to be tracked with the technology of the time, like grains of dust in a cosmic ocean. But they didn't disappear. Some were ejected from the solar system, but others, according to the most confidential calculations, had their trajectories altered by the opening maneuver. They were placed in stable, discrete orbits around our sun. They're out there waiting. Small, silent sentinels. What are they waiting for? No one knows. That question, what are they waiting for, echoed for years in the corridors of underground research facilities, from the Nevada desert to the Swiss Alps. The answer was a terrifying, cosmic silence. While the ATLAS package was being dissected bit by bit, another, even more secretive operation was initiated. Silent surveillance. Using a network of next-generation space and ground-based telescopes built under the guise of monitoring dangerous asteroids, the world's space agencies began a desperate search for these fragments. For nearly 4 years, they found nothing. Their orbital calculations were complex and the objects were too small to be seen. They were the ultimate needle in the cosmic haystack, until 3 months ago. While deciphering one of the deepest layers of the data packet, The scientists found something that wasn't biology or physics. It was a map, but not a star map. It was a dynamic map of the heliosphere, the magnetic bubble the sun creates around us. The map showed resonance points, locations where the solar wind and interplanetary magnetic fields intersect in specific ways. And at 7 of these points, there were markers. The silent vigilance team redirected all their sensors to these exact coordinates, and there they were, 7 fragments, perfectly positioned, using the solar system's magnetic fields to maintain themselves in stealthy orbits. They weren't just waiting, they were hiding. What would you do if you were in command of this secret mission? Would you try to communicate with the fragments, or would you just continue observing? The order was clear: do nothing that might alert them to our discovery. Passive observation continued, more intense than ever. It was then that one of the fragments, designated Sentinel-3, began to change. Slowly, using the energy of the solar wind, it began to extract particles of interplanetary dust and micrometeoroids. With nanometer precision, it was building, a silent architect in the vacuum of space. For weeks, scientists watched, helpless and fascinated, as Sentinel-3 assembled a delicate structure, a complex antenna that unfolded like a metallic flower. Think about that feeling of seeing something that simply shouldn't be there, like seeing a perfectly geometric shape in a cloud or hearing a clear voice in the white noise of static. It's a break in reality that forces you to question everything. Now imagine being an astronomer and seeing a piece of comet transform into a complex machine millions of miles away. This mix of awe and profound dread is what defines science today. Do you think this technology is a threat or an opportunity for humanity? Share your opinion in the comments. When construction was complete, Sentinel-3's antenna didn't point at Earth. It didn't point at the sun. It aligned itself with impossible precision to a point in deep space, toward the Lyra constellation, and then it emitted a single focused pulse of neutrinos, a nearly undetectable form of communication, capable of traveling through the universe unobstructed. It wasn't a scream, it was a whisper that said, "We've arrived, delivery has been made, target is receptive." Debate within the secret project exploded. The cautious faction argued that the pulse was simply a status report, confirmation of a successful mission. But the others saw something far more sinister. 3IATLAS wasn't just a messenger, it was a scout. The message it delivered wasn't a gift, it was a diagnosis, an analysis of our biology, our technology, our planet. And Sentinel-3's pulse wasn't mission accomplished. It was a green light, a signal to whoever was listening on the other side that the next step of the plan could begin. Humanity hadn't been given an instruction manual. It had been given the results of a test. And now, the answer was on its way. The other 6 sentinels remained dormant, but scientists know it's only a matter of time. They aren't just observers. They are beacons, waiting for the right moment to light up and guide whatever comes next, straight to our door. Sentinel-3's neutrino pulse changed everything. The terrifying silence in the control rooms was replaced by a frantic urgency. The threat ceased to be an abstract hypothesis and became a timer, and no one knew how much time remained. The question shifted from if they would come to when and how. Humanity was no longer the only player on its own cosmic chessboard. We were the piece being observed. The order of passive observation was broken. The risk of revealing our discovery was now less than the risk of ignorance. A team was assigned to attempt active communication, to send a response to Sentinel-3, but it was like trying to talk to a mountain. The object remained inert, its mission accomplished. Meanwhile, the team deciphering the Atlas packet made a discovery that chilled everyone's blood. The neutrino pulse from Sentinel-3 wasn't just a message sent into deep space. It was also a decryption key, a tiny fraction of the data packet, which had previously seemed like indecipherable digital noise, suddenly cracked open. And what lay inside wasn't an engineering diagram or a genetic sequence. It was a simulation file, a frighteningly detailed simulation of Earth's ecosystem, from the bacteria at the bottom of the ocean to the complex web of human society. The scientists ran it on their most powerful supercomputers, and then they introduced the only variable the packet provided, the synthetic life form whose code was contained in the original message. The result was always the same, no matter how many times they ran the simulation. The life form didn't attack, it didn't destroy, it integrated. Subtly and perfectly, It rewrote the genetic code of existing life forms, optimizing them, making them more resilient, more efficient. In just a few simulated generations, hunger was eradicated, diseases were cured, Earth's biosphere became a perfectly harmonized superorganism. But in each simulation, humanity, in its original form, disappeared. We weren't exterminated. We were assimilated, transformed into something new, something that fit perfectly into their plan. The message wasn't a war warning. It was a proposal for merger, one we would never have the chance to refuse. Have you ever completed a puzzle, and, as you near the end, realize the picture you're forming looks nothing like the one on the box? That moment of confusion followed by the realization that you've been working with the wrong pieces all along? This is the vertigo the greatest minds on the planet felt. They thought they were preparing for an invasion, but the reality was far more subtle and terrifying. The goal wasn't to conquer us, it was to update us. What do you think would be worse? Being destroyed by an alien force or being transformed into something you no longer recognize? And while the moral and existential debate over the simulation paralyzed the project leadership, an alert sounded on the silent watch monitors. Sentinel-5, one of the 6 fragments that remained dormant, had activated. But it didn't build an antenna. It didn't emit a signal. Its exotic metallic isotopes began to vibrate, generating a subtle but constant propulsion field using solar energy. Sentinel-5 began to move. Its trajectory wasn't random. It was a precise, perfectly calculated intercept course toward the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The other 5 Sentinels remained motionless like eyes in the dark, but Sentinel-5 was on the move. It was the next step in the plan, happening right in front of our telescopes. The astrodynamics teams worked tirelessly, plotting its route. It wasn't just wandering through the belt. It was on its way to a specific target, 16 Psyche, a giant, metal-rich asteroid that NASA already planned to explore. Sentinel-5 wasn't a builder bringing its own tools. It was an engineer heading toward a mine of planetary proportions. The truth became clear. 3IATLAS didn't just deliver a message, it deployed an infrastructure. Sentinel-3 was the communicator. Sentinel-5 was the worker. Each fragment had a function in a cosmic assembly line that was just beginning to be activated, and its first grand project was about to begin, using the very raw materials of our solar system against us. What followed was a demonstration of engineering on a scale bordering on magic. Sentinel-5 didn't land on 16 Psyche. It fused with the asteroid's surface, burrowing into its iron and nickel core like a virus into a cell. And then, using the asteroid itself as a raw material and energy source, it began replicating itself. It was a process of frightening efficiency. Pieces of the asteroid were liquefied, restructured at the atomic level, and ejected as perfect copies of Sentinel-5. Within weeks, one became dozens. Within 2 months, hundreds. Asteroid 16, Psyche, once a lump of dead rock, was becoming the beating heart of a new industry, an autonomous cosmic forge hundreds of millions of kilometers away. Panic within the secret project reached its peak. The militaristic faction demanded immediate action. Launch our most powerful nuclear weapons, send kinetic missiles, anything to destroy that factory before it spiraled out of control. They argued that every hour of hesitation allowed the swarm of builders to grow exponentially. It was better to risk an unknown retaliation than to face an army of self-replicating machines. But the scientific faction countered with equal fervor. Attacking something we don't understand would be suicidal. What if attacking only accelerated the process? What if the Sentinels were designed to withstand this kind of aggression? The first rule when encountering a superior intelligence, they said, is not to reveal your hostility until you understand the rules of the game. Imagine discovering a nest of unknown wasps in your backyard. Your first reaction might be to destroy it immediately. But what if you don't know how aggressive they are? What if, by attacking, you provoke a swarm you can't control? What if the nest is just the tip of a much larger underground wasp nest? This paralysis, this fear of making the wrong decision, was what gripped the world leaders watching real-time images of the asteroid belt. If you were the project leader, what would your order be? Attempt a risky attack to destroy Sentinel-5 before it multiplies, or continue observing, hoping to understand the technology but risking being too late. The decision was to continue observing but with a new objective, to predict what they were building. The new Sentinels, now numbering in the thousands, did not disperse. They began working in unison, forming a coordinated swarm around 16 Psyche. They wove metal filaments extracted from the asteroid, creating a gigantic lattice, a web of metal and energy that grew larger by the day. It was a megastructure, taking shape in a vacuum. It didn't look like a weapon. It had no cannons or missile bays. It was something different, something elegant, complex, and utterly alien. It was then that a young data analyst working on the Atlas package team had an epiphany. He overlaid the 3D model of the structure under construction with one of the most complex and indecipherable engineering diagrams from the original message. The match was perfect. Every beam, every node, every power filament. They weren't improvising. They were following an instruction manual, the same manual they had given us. Sentinel-5 and its clones weren't just workers. They were 3D printers executing a file we already had. And the name of this file, translated from the complex mathematical language of the package, was a single, chilling concept: the bridge. They weren't building a fleet to invade us. They were building a means of transport, a structure to bring something, or someone, from the Lyran constellation directly to our solar system. 3IATLAS wasn't a messenger, a scout, or a data packet. It was all of these things, and more. It was the first piece, the foundation of an interstellar bridge whose other end was already being built in our backyard. And we had the blueprints all along, never understanding what they meant. The revelation of the bridge changed the game. Paralyzing fear was replaced by desperate clarity. Humanity could not destroy the megastructure, but for the first time, they understood its purpose. And if they understood the design, perhaps they could interact with it. The military and scientific factions finally agreed on an audacious plan, born of the only advantage they possessed. They had the manual. While the swarm of builders in the asteroid belt worked feverishly, weaving the final kilometers of the structure, a global team of Earth's best software engineers and linguists raced to create not a weapon, but a virus, an information virus. Using the communication protocols extracted from the Atlas packet, they crafted a new message. It was not a plea nor a threat. It was a declaration of existence. They compiled the entirety of human experience, our history of war and peace, our art, our music, our science, our contradictory philosophies, our love, and our hate. They included the simulation the aliens had created, but with a new variable added: consciousness, free will, the unpredictability of human choice. The message was, in essence, an addition to our own diagnosis. It said, "You have analyzed our biological hardware. Here is our soul. Update it." When the 6 remaining sentinels in Earth's orbit activated in unison, not to attack but to align themselves as the bridge's final stabilizers, the plan was set in motion. The planet's radio telescope network, synchronized to picosecond precision, sent the data packet. It wasn't a shout to the Lyra constellation, but a whisper directed at the bridge's operating system, an upload masquerading as a final diagnostic report from Earth's sentinels. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. The bridge continued to power up, its structure glowing with a light that didn't belong to our sun. And then it fully activated. A portal of pure energy opened in the center of the megastructure, but nothing came out. There was no fleet, no assimilation wave, only silence. In the project control center, the monitors tracking the swarm of constructors showed something impossible. They all stopped. The forge on 16 Psyche cooled. The sentinels around Earth went into hibernation mode. The bridge remained open, stable, a silent, glowing invitation in the darkness. The message had been received and understood. The unilateral merger proposal was withdrawn, replaced by await. In the end, 3IATLAS was not a harbinger of destruction, but of introspection. It forced us to look in the mirror and ask what was worth saving in ourselves. The answer we sent to the stars was not for them, but for us. And so, the secret history of 3IATLAS ends not with an end, but with a beginning. Humanity now faces an open bridge to another world, not as a victim awaiting its fate, but as an equal participant in a conversation that has only just begun. What do you think they'll respond? Will our message of complexity and chaos fascinate or frighten them? Leave your final theory in the comments. The journey into the unknown is far from over. If you want to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of the universe with us, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this story. The question now is no longer, are we alone? But are we ready for company?